Hello, math students. We're going to talk some more today. Yesterday, we didn't actually talk about parallel lines at all. We just had different angles that were created when we had lines intersecting. Today, we're actually going to be looking at parallel lines with what's called a transversal line, and then the angle relationships that we get from that. So, in your note packet, now we're on page 2. A transversal is just a line that intersects or cuts through some other lines. Most of the time, we're going to be looking at parallel lines, which we've already talked about, and this transversal is going to cut through it. But you can see the picture that's on the screen right now. Those are clearly not parallel lines. And I did that on purpose so that we could talk about just specific information here. So the transversal line is just the line that's going to be cutting through there. And I'll even uncover this first answer here. In the picture, it says blank is a transversal of lines A and B. Line C is the one that's going to be intersecting those. So line C is the transversal on that. Interior angles are just the angles that are on the inside of those lines that we're getting intersected. So lines A and B, I want the ones that are on the inside of those two lines, which would really be all of this stuff is in between those two lines. The interior angles are going to be angles 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. These two angles and these two angles are in between lines A and C. Those are called interior angles. So then obviously the other ones are going to be the exterior angles, the ones that are on the outside of those two lines that we're getting intersected. So the exterior angles for this, that'll be 1 and 2, 7 and 8. They're outside of those two lines. So if the two lines that are getting cut by the transversal or intersected by the transversal, if those two lines are parallel, remember we have a symbol for that, if they're parallel, then we get special pairs of angles with those interior angles and exterior angles. So you can see the extra arrowheads that are on the two lines there. That means that those are parallel lines. And you can see that now I only have numbered the interior angles in this one. So we're talking about something called alternate interior angles. So interior angles, that 3, 4, 5, and 6, those are all interior angles because they're inside, in between those two parallel lines. For alternate interior angles, that means that I'm going to pick one of the angles that's touching this line, so either 3 and 4, and I'm going to pick one of the angles that's touching this line, but I want to pick one on each side of the transversal. That's what alternate means. It means that one will be, in this case, one's on the left and one's on the right, for instance. But I have to take one that's touching the green line, one that's touching the red line, and on different sides of the transversal. So for instance, 4 and 6 are going to be what's called alternate interior angles. Angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles. And the other pair of angles is 3 and 5. Notice that symbol that's congruent in between there. So if I have parallel lines, now 4 and 6 are congruent angles, not just that they're, hey, it's kind of cool that they're alternate interior, they're also congruent. 3 and 5, same thing. I want you to also notice that when we have parallel lines, we cut it with a transversal, you're going to be getting two kinds of angles. Some of the angles in this picture are acute, so less than 90 degrees, and some of them are obtuse. All of the acute angles are going to be congruent, they'll all match. All of the obtuse angles are going to match. And one more thing, when we talk about alternate interior angles, I want you to be looking for a Z shape. I'm not going to say just the letter Z because this first one I'm going to draw is actually going to be backwards. But if I'm drawing on my parallel line, take a detour down the transversal, and then I keep going on my parallel line. It's a Z shape. I know it's backwards, but here is my Z. Angle 3 and angle 5 are in the corners of the Z. Those are alternate interior angles. Now, I can also draw that same Z shape. Just doesn't look quite as obvious for 4 and 6. So I'm going to the right, down the transversal, keep going to the right. 4 and 6 are in the corners of that Z. So I want you to add to your notes it's a Z shape. And I'm putting it in quotes because it's not, an actual letter Z, but that's the shape that we're looking for. Alternate exterior angles, I don't have a cool shape to look for, but after what we just talked about with alternate interior, this should sort of make sense. Exterior, you can see I only have the exterior angles labeled, 1 and 2, 7 and 8, and I have to have one on the top, one on the bottom, one on the right side of the transversal, one on the left side of the transversal. So angles 1 and 7 are alternate exterior angles, outside, different sides of the transversal. 2 and 8, also alternate exterior, that one and that one. Again, 2 and 8 are obtuse angles, and they're gonna match. 1 and 7 are acute angles, and they're gonna match. One more that we're gonna look for today is corresponding angles. Corresponding, if you just know what that word means, it just means that they match up. We're talking about here in the same position. I've got 2 pictures just so that it didn't get so crowded. So I really do have 4 pairs of corresponding angles. Corresponding just means, in this case, that they're in the same position. So in the top, in these angles up here in the top, angle 1 is on the top left corner. So down in the bottom in the top left corner, that's angle 5. Now, let me connect that a little bit. I know that it's upside down. I know that it's backwards, but can you see that F shape right there? So angles 1 and 5 are corresponding angles, and that means that they're also congruent. 3 and 7, here's my F shape. 3 is in the bottom right corner, so is the 7. So there's my F shape. They're in like the corners of the F. Okay. In this one, now when I've got the even numbered angles, I'm just gonna uncover these right away. 2 and 6 are corresponding. Here's my F shape. Upside down, but the 2 and the 6 are both in the corners of that F. 4 and 8, it's like a backwards F. So there's my 4 and there's my 8. Those are also corresponding angles. They're in the same position. Okay, so now on the back of page 2, we've got some blanks to fill in. I know this looks pretty wordy, and they've got a lot of stuff going on in this picture, but there's some good discussion that we can have. First discussion item I'd like to say is that I could never have this bookcase in my house, because why would you have a bookcase where the supports aren't vertical? Like, that would drive me insane, but whatever. Maybe someone just built it and didn't do a good job. That's okay. So in here, it says line A is parallel to line B. So those are those horizontal lines. I want to know the angle relationship between angles 2 and 4. So let's start with that. Angles 2 and 4. Do you see my Z shape? Look back in your notes if you need to. But that Z shape tells me that since they're both on the inside of those lines, different sides of the transversal, first of all, they are interior angles, but because they're on different sides of the transversal, they are alternate interior angles. Now, I didn't talk about abbreviations, and I should have, but when I say alternate interior, I usually just do alt-int. Alternate interior angles. For alternate exterior, I would do alt-ext. And then corresponding is just CORR. So since angles 1 and 2 are supplementary, now I know that they would make a straight line. They would add up to 180 degrees. I know that angle 1 is 95 degrees in this picture. I want to be able to figure out what angles 2 and 4 are. Well, angle 2, because these two make a straight line right here, 95 plus what number would give me 180 degrees? That would have to be 85 degrees. And if angle 2 is 85 degrees, this angle that's alternate interior would also be 85 degrees. In this one, I just want to know what the angle relationships are. There's no numbers in terms of like the size of the angles or anything. Angles 4 and 8. So here's 4, here's 8. Notice that they're both on the outside of the parallel lines, different sides of the transversal. We're going to call that alternate exterior. And again, my abbreviation looks like this. Alternate exterior angles. Now, 5 and 7, here's angle 5. Yes, it's an exterior angle, but 7 is not an exterior angle. Look at my F shape right there. 7 is in the bottom right corner, 5 is in the bottom right corner in those groups. That's going to be corresponding. That's my abbreviation for corresponding. Next, I want to look at 3 and 7. 3 and 7 make a Z shape. They're both inside the parallel lines. They're both on different sides of the transversal. That's alternate interior. And then finally, we want to look at 6 and 8. Here's angle 6. Here's angle 8. One's interior, one's exterior. That's usually a really good clue that it's going to be corresponding. 8 is in the top right corner. 6 is in the top right corner. It'll be corresponding. Now this last one. They're looking at lines M and N are supposed to be lined up with the railings, the spindles, I guess we would call those. And then line 3 is the top part of that railing. It says that line M is parallel to line N. Classify the relationship between angles 1 and 2. Well, here's angle 1. Here's angle 2. I see an F shape. I know it's turned. I know it's all kind of wonky, but that is corresponding. And I'm going to just jot this down right now. I will uncover the answer in a second. It says if angle 3 is 40 degrees, then I want to know what angle 1 is and what angle 2 is. So 2 and 3 make a straight line. That's supplementary. That's 180 degrees. 180 minus 40 is going to be 140. And since 1 and 2 are corresponding, they'll match. That means that that angle is also 140 degrees. Now, today's worksheet is angle relationships, day 2 worksheet. It was a book assignment, but I just kind of made it into a worksheet. So the answer key is in Schoology. Don't worry that the numbering doesn't start at number 1. That's not a big deal. There will be a learning check, and if you need help with anything, let me know.